some things that are unsatisfactory to a home inspector may not be considered housing quality standard deficiencies. So, for example, if we have a property and we see some older, cracked concrete blocks at the front walkway, but the concrete is not offset, which means you can't trip when you step across it, it's just cracked, we'll report it as an unsatisfactory cracked walkway. But because it is not a tripping hazard at the time of the inspection, it does not fail housing quality standards. So from that perspective, even though it's going to be on the unsatisfactory list, it may not be a housing quality standard deficiency that the seller will be required to correct. Am I going to understand where I'm going with this? So your negotiations will have to be a lot tougher because you may have to negotiate or be willing or need to negotiate outside of the confines of the housing quality standards checklist. Because just because it passes HQS doesn't mean it's going to be what you want. But here's the good news. If you're not satisfied with the terms of the contract, you get to do what? Withdraw your offer and walk away. Okay? That's the power of a home inspection. Because based upon that report, if you are not satisfied with the results that the seller is going to give you and the negotiations following that information, you have the right to withdraw your offer and get your deposit back. But what's the first rule I told you? Be slow to give your money because it's going to be slow coming back. So look at heaters like this and know that even if it is functional, you might be facing with a $4,000 replacement cost within 1 to 2 years. Another point you need to know about this is this. A seller or a seller's agent may say, well, we're going to give you a home warranty. Okay? Home warranties, read the paperwork carefully. Most home warranties will not repair or replace an item that was already at the end of its life expectancy when you bought the house. So a home warranty that would cover everything in this house would not cover this heater because what? It was already beyond the life expectancy. That's like an insurance company insuring a 100-year-old man. They're not looking to pay out money. Okay? So they won't insure that. So be aware that those warranties have lots of loopholes that may catch you. Okay? Significant structural concerns. In some cases, we may find conditions that are so drastic or problematic that we're going to defer to a higher authority. And in this case, there was significant termite infestation and damage to the structural support beams where we called for a structural engineer to evaluate and determine whether or not this was a safe condition, and if not, what needed to be done to improve the quality of this integrity. At that point, where we called for a structural engineer, where does the burden of responsibility fall on? The seller. It's their house. They're the ones who need to hire the structural engineer. And that structural engineer will either say one of two things. One, they'll say that I don't know what I'm talking about, and that's a perfectly legitimate setup. And two, they may say, yes, this is wrong, this is what needs to be done, this is how much it's going to cost. And at that point, whose responsibility is to deal with it? The seller. Okay? Now, if that engineer says that I didn't know what I was talking about and there's nothing wrong with that installation, and 6 months later you fall through the floor, what do you get to do? Sue the engineer. Okay? So that's how the home inspection protects you. And what you tell the seller is, okay, you're going to get an engineer to give you an estimate on the condition of this project. When you do that, let me know what the results are. And if you take too long to come back to me with your answer, I'm going to want my deposit back because I'm going to probably want to move on to another house. You don't want to be having your money hung out there all day while they take the time to gather up the money to hire an engineer to assess the problem with their home, right? Anybody out there? So you've got to protect yourself. Next thing, look beyond the superficial. Now here we have a kitchen cabinet and it's brand new. And the buyer had told me, I got brand new cabinets, they put brand new cabinets in the kitchen, it's great, everything's wonderful. No, it wasn't. Because if you notice, that's not a snake, that's a coiled up rotted rag. Okay? She never opened up the cabinet. Yeah, it was brand new, but they put it on a leaking drain line. And if you notice, there's no kitchen cabinet floor. So this is evidence of a contractor who I see a lot out there His company is called Cousin Bubba and his traveling band of handymen. Okay? Beware of that kind of workmanship. Also, the electrical systems. When you're looking at properties, you may find that some of the systems are in poor condition. Obviously this was, and we knew that going into the project. I knew that this house, the electric was going to be off and the seller was going to replace all the wiring. But one more thing you need to look at. When you're looking at properties and systems in homes, look for things that don't belong together. What's wrong with this picture? Everything. I like that. What's this here? Say it loud because you're right. That's the water meter. So we've got the water line and the water meter where? Right in front of? So if we have a burst pipe, what do we have? Electric fire. Okay, way to go. So not only does the seller have to replace the entire electric system, what do they have to do? You can't move water. So what are they going to have to do? Move the electric to the other wall of the house, adding to the cost of that repair. So when you're at properties, I need you to look for things like gas lines running in front of electric panel boxes where you can't even get the cover off. Or, my personal favorite, electric wires laying on top of heaters being kept warm. Okay? Look for gas service valves, shut-off valves, that are pressed so close to the wall that you couldn't turn off that gas in an emergency even if your life depended on it. Okay? Look for these signs of things that don't belong together. Go back to your Sesame Street days, you know? One of these things are not like the other. These things just don't belong, okay? Can you tell I have grandchildren? Okay? Sesame Street and Blue's Clues, I'm dying here. Okay? Between that and my 17-year-old, I could slip my wrist. Okay? So, look for these things that don't belong together. Look for situations, for example, where they've done a refinishing of the basement and they sealed up the electric panel so you can't even get to it. Or, better yet, here's a cool one. They've put a drywall in the basement here, out to here, and your water main shutoff is way in there. Can you reach that? Probably not. In which case, you have to tear off an entire finished wall just to be able to access the water main in an emergency. Pay attention to these little details. They add up to money. The outside of the property, the service entrance cable. This will fail a home inspection all day. If the cable looks like this, it's going to need to be replaced so that it looks like that. And you obviously realize, of course, which house I was inspecting, right? I never get lucky. I had that house. The cost to replace that cable is anywhere from $700 to $800 just for that cable. And if the cable on the outside looks like this, especially if the cable that's going into the house is frayed, this is probably what the electric panel looks like on the inside of the basement. Tack on another $800, $900. So look for these indications of expensive problems that will need to be addressed when the home inspector comes through. Okay? When you're in the bedrooms, we need to have at least 2 outlets in every room. And I don't mean 2 outlets because someone punched a hole in the wall with a screwdriver and shoved an extension cord in from the back bedroom. Or another personal favorite of mine, where they have the extension cord going out the window, going into the next door neighbor's window. Because mom lived next door, and anytime he ran his air conditioner, it popped all his fuses. So he was sucking electricity from mom. Okay, mom needs to cut the cord, literally. Okay? So yeah, I love that one. So these are things you need to be paying attention to because they will fail the home inspection. And your program is one of the few programs where you actually will have a failed home inspection, with a grocery list of things that will have to be corrected and re-inspected by the inspector before you go to closing. Okay? Ask questions. The only dumb question is, there is no dumb question. If there's something you need to know and you don't ask, you're dumb for not asking it. This is where the rubber meets the road. This is where you put your money where your mouth is. Or actually, the reverse, you put your mouth where your money is. Yes, ma'am?
Do you have to pay every time the inspector comes out, or is it just a one-time?
She has an excellent question. Do you have to pay every time you have a home inspection or just the one time? Let me make an analogy for you. A home inspector is like a family doctor for your house. We give your house a checkup. Now, if you went and had a checkup, do you pay a copay? Now, do most of you pay a copay? Does somebody pay for that doctor's service? Okay, you don't play with me, right? Now, if you go back 2 weeks later to get some lab work done because he's part of the test, do you pay another copay? Did I answer your question? Why do you think I'm standing here? I only want to see you one time. I want you to scrutinize these homes so carefully that you only need to have one inspection on one property. Because yes, every time you have a home inspected, unless you don't want them to do anything, you pay for that service for every single property. They're going on the second roof, aren't they? They're going through the second basement. Yes, and then you. Yes, ma'am.
Do you receive your payment prior to closing or at closing?
The question is, does the home inspector receive payment prior to closing or at closing? We get paid at the time we deliver our service because we can't guarantee you're going to closing. And many times the information we give you means you don't go to closing. Yes, ma'am. How much is the home inspection? We're going to talk about that toward the end, okay? When you understand exactly what you're paying for, all right? Yes, ma'am.
When you're inspecting the house, how can you tell if there's a leak in the wall?
How can you tell if there's a leak in the wall? In many cases, you can't, except that there's signs of stains or damage in the wall. And that is the excellent point, because a home inspection is not designed to completely eliminate all risk of ownership. There are risks involved in the home ownership process. And at the level of expense that you pay for a home inspection in relation to the type of service provided, you're not going to know everything about the house. The only way you could know if there's any leaks possibly behind a wall is if you actually hired someone to drill a hole in that wall and stick a fiber optic camera to look behind every single wall at a cost of about $4,000. Or you can have someone do a radioactive test to test the walls for moisture entry, which is also about $800 for just that moisture testing. So a home inspector is able to look at what is visually accessible at the time of the inspection. But the good news is this: it's very unlikely any water in behind a wall will not be visible, because it doesn't just stay there behind the wall. It falls down, it hits floors, it goes in ceilings in rooms below. It is very easy to find water. Water is the easiest thing to identify as a problem. The thing that a home inspector has trouble being able to assist you in evaluating is problems that may exist with behind the wall wiring. Because unless we see obvious clues, there's no way of knowing what's going on behind the wall. But that again is the risk of home ownership. This program, the loan, the home inspection, is designed to help reduce your risks of home ownership, but has never been intended to eliminate or defer that risk to someone else. Okay? Now we're going to move on real quickly. Get a home inspection. That's a requirement for this program, and as you understand, you do pay for that inspection at the time that you have the service performed. You will also be paying for an appraisal, and that appraisal is hired by the lender, but it's to help the lender understand the quality of the home that you're being asked to pay for and whether or not it's worth the money they're going to give you. That has nothing to do with the home inspection report and is something totally separate. You want to attend the home inspection. You want to make sure that you carefully choose your building consultant. When you're using a home inspector, that person is going to be representing you in this transaction. There are many home inspectors in the Delaware County who will not do the Housing Quality Standard checklist. They won't even do the paperwork for you. They feel it's some sort of additional liability. Not only does our company do that paperwork, but we actually do it for free. And Mike will tell you, Mike,
yes.
Share with them. Remember, we had the situation where the person hired a home inspector who didn't do the HQS, and then they had to hire another company, us, to do the home inspection, and then they had to wait because they demanded to get the money back from the original home inspector, and they said they didn't have to give the money back because they still did the home inspection. Okay, so make sure that whoever you choose does do that HQS report, because if not, you're going to end up having to get another home inspection from someone who does. Our company is full service, full-time inspectors, and I won't go into a commercial because I hope you'll give us all a call and ask to let you know what the information is that makes us different from the competition. What I will say is this: you need to attend that home inspection. You need to take the time to get the information to make that informed decision. The home inspections that we provide you, we give you an on-site computer-generated report. Our company carries battery-operated printers and handheld computers. So when you walk out of the house, you walk out with the whole inspection report and estimates for the repairs, as well as the HQS information. So you don't have to wonder or wait. You know exactly what you're doing. And additionally, we download that report plus all of the digital photos, so you have online access to that report from any computer. So if you leave your report at home and need to have access to it, 14 days from that inspection, you'll have a username and password. You can just go to any terminal, any computer, and access your report. We designed that because a lot of people need that information and they forget the paperwork at home. And this way they don't have to worry about it. Number 8, review all details. You need to sit down with your housing counselor, either Mike here at Media or CCIP. And there is an important detail you need to know. How many of you here are working with the City of Chester? Anyone here going through City of Chester? Raise your hand. Okay, everybody look at the Chester people. Say, congratulations, you are the lucky ones. Here's why they are lucky. If they buy a home and are putting an offer on a property and we find chipping, flaking, peeling, painted surfaces in the home and it was built before 1978, we have to report that as a failure because of the probable presence of lead-based paint. We have to call for a lead paint inspection. When it fails, and it will, because all homes built before 1978 have lead paint, the people who are buying in Chester, the City of Chester will permit the seller to make corrections and repair that problem so they can proceed to buy the home after they have made it lead safe. Those of you who are buying in Media and Delaware County, hear me. If when the home inspector comes, we find chipping, flaking, peeling paint and we have to report it as lead-based paint and a lead-based paint inspection fails that inspection, you can't buy the house. No ifs, ands, no buts, no discussion. You have spent your money on a home you can't buy. So, what do? Here's what you want to do. Make sure you tell your agent to tell the agent for the seller to tell the seller to make sure there is no chipping, flaking, peeling paint by the time the inspector comes through. Now, it sounds like I'm telling you to cheat the system. Not really. Because painted surfaces are not a concern if they are not chipping, flaking, or peeling. Yes, ma'am?
Including the basement, everywhere in the house?
Everywhere. If it's in the house, it will be inspected. So, if there's any chipping, flaking paint, have them slap a coat of paint over it. As long as it is not chipping, we won't fail it. And as long as it's stabilized, it isn't a hazard. Does everybody understand that? Because it's very heartbreaking to have people spend money for a home inspection when there's huge windowsills full of chipping paint. And we know it's lead-based because of the age of the house. Okay? So please understand that. And if you need further clarification on that, please email or call us. We'll help you with that information. Yes, you have a question? Now, remove all doubts. Ask questions. But more than just ask questions, get answers. Don't stop getting the questions asked until you get the answer you want. This lady asked what it costs for a home inspection. I haven't forgotten her question. But if I had, she needs to keep saying, wait a second, you didn't answer my question. And if you don't get answers you like, keep asking. Do a pre-closing walkthrough checklist. Pre-closing walkthrough on the morning of settlement is when you go back through the property to make sure it is at least as good as you found it at the home inspection and the re-inspection. And let's talk about re-inspections. When we find things that are unsatisfactory and deficient and don't pass the inspection, the seller has to repair those things. And then we come back out and re-inspect that. You get charged for that re-inspection. Now, if you have pencil and paper, pens up, because here's something I definitely want you to put down. You want to add to your agreement for sale under special clauses the following sentence. Seller agrees to pay all re-inspection fees should the first re-inspection fail. Because we have to keep re-inspecting it as long as it fails. But the program will only reimburse you for one re-inspection. Okay? Does anyone need me to repeat that?
Seller should pay for all re-inspections.
Seller is agreeing to pay all additional re-inspection fees should the first re-inspection fail. Because who was responsible for fixing the problem? And if it didn't get fixed right, whose fault was it? Why should you pay? But there have been a lot of people who've been fighting over that point because guess what? We have to come back. There is another fee to come back. And it's very frustrating when people say, well, can you come back for free? No. Yes?
Is it always the same amount?
It is not the same amount. And we're going to talk about those scales in a second, okay? But if you follow the steps that I have suggested, you will be sitting on top of the world because you will be a homeowner that will be happy with the home that you own. I have found there's only 3 things you need in life. To be a business owner, to be a homeowner, to do anything. There's only 3 things. You need God, you need faith in God, and you need patience to let God work His will in your life. With those 3 things alone, you can do this. You can do anything. I thank you all very much for your time and attention. And I'm going to answer her question because she seems really bent out of shape about it. The cost for the home inspections are this. Our home inspection company is not the cheapest name in the phone book. Here, you've got it on tape, but I've said that, okay? I don't want to be the cheapest name because with quality, you come to price. We provide you the computer-generated report. We give you the on-site estimates for repairs. We do the HQS at no additional cost. We provide you with online access, and we provide you with ongoing customer support for as long as you live in that home, including referrals to contractors and on telephone access. That all being said, the cost for our home inspection of a typical 3-bedroom, 1-bath row house in this area is $360. The cost for the reinspection, for the first reinspection, is $150, and then for every reinspection it goes down $25 because presumably we're not checking the same quantity of things over and over again. So does that answer your question? Yes. I thank you all so much. Could I get those white cards and I will be